Elf Oil, world champion.
Hello and welcome to Formula One Grand Prix in the week leading up to the German Grand Prix. This is Ben Edwards, and this week we go right to the heart of the sport, literally, as we monitor David Coulthard's pulse before, during and after the British Grand Prix. Also this week we investigate the process of setting up the Formula One paddock at the Grand Prix and how the teams go about squeezing a quart into a pint pot, especially at Monaco. More behind-the-scenes stories continue with a close-up on Total, the fuel suppliers to Jordan Peugeot and a company new to Formula One this year. This weekend, the German Grand Prix will offer Schumacher the chance to win his home Grand Prix for the first time. We review the past 4 events. And we round up the programme with a musical conclusion, courtesy of the Jordan Barbecue at Silverstone. But we start this week with our own tribute to the 5-time world champion who died last week, Juan Manuel Fangio. Fangio and Schumacher. These were some of the last pictures of the Argentine driver at the track and on the track, taken back in 1992 at a special gathering of Mercedes drivers at the Norris Ring.
What I thought was lost is falling apart in the face of something new.
Fangio began his racing career in Argentina in 1936 in a Model A Ford, but it was in Europe that he began to establish his international reputation. His first event was the French Grand Prix of 1948 in a Simca Gordini, but his first win came at San Remo in 1949 at the wheel of a Maserati. Fangio was already 37 years old, the war years having delayed the start of his career, but more victories soon followed. In 1950, the World Championship became official, and Fangio drove for Alfa Romeo in the 158. He won here at Monaco, the most prestigious Grand Prix of the season, ahead of Ascari and Chiron. And he also won in Belgium and France to end up second in the championship, behind Giuseppe Farina. In 1951, it was Fangio's turn. Still with Alfa Romeo, he won 3 of the 7 Grand Prix and became world champion for the first time. He won in Switzerland and at Reims, where he shared the car with Fagioli. Second place here at Silverstone and second also at the Nürburgring. His third win of the season came in Spain. It was perhaps the turning point for Fangio. The first World Championship, it was to be the first of 5 and a record that has yet to be beaten. It didn't always go well though. Fangio also suffered his disappointments. Well, that's life. There are always good and bad memories. But when the good ones are very numerous, one tends to forget the bad ones. Well, that was Fangio speaking in 1992. And Fangio himself was the victim of a very serious accident which put him out of most of the 1952 season. In 1953, he came back with Maserati. Took a couple of second places in France and in England, and finished second in the championship behind Ascari. The following years were really the golden years of Fangio's career. He won the championship with Maserati and Mercedes in 1954, and then in 1955 with Mercedes again, driving alongside Stirling Moss. 1956 it was with Ferrari, and then winning again in 57 with Maserati.
I think he's still a good driver. Maybe we should change. He should drive and I should look. un buon futuro per lui.
Well, Fangio talking of Schumacher those few years ago, saying, I think there's no question about his future. It's already decided. Schumacher is already a champion. Well, great pictures from Fangio's visit to the Norris Ring several years ago. The last time behind the wheel of a racing car. We all know that driving a Grand Prix car is a very stressful business, and at Silverstone we had the opportunity to see just how stressful. We joined up with David Coulthard as he prepared for the British Grand Prix and monitored his pulse rate. The build-up to the Grand Prix itself and the build-up to a very harsh physical environment, up to 4.5 Gs in the corners, temperatures of up to 70 degrees plus in the cockpit. More than 90 kilos of pressure needed on the brake pedal. That sort of stress, the heartbeat sometimes reaches 180 beats per minute. We start our story 20 minutes from the start of the race as David gets prepared, getting changed into the fireproof overalls and heading for the starting grid. Andrea Murray, girlfriend and fiancée, always present at the Grand Prix and a very important supporter of Coulthard, and usually the last person that David speaks to before he gets into the car. The build-up begins already and the heart rate already beginning to increase, more due to the emotional stress than the physical stress at this point. In less than 15 minutes now, it's the start of the race. It's time to really focus and concentrate. The pulse rate is increasing. All the 24 cars off for the British Grand Prix. Coulthard getting into the car, and this is where the tension really starts to build. The start of the warm-up lap and the driver's stress almost at its peak. A good start is obviously essential, but it's also the most hazardous time of the race. The driver's pulse is up to about 140 beats per minute when the light turns to green, and around about 170 at the first braking zone. Increases at various times throughout the race, particularly when involved in confrontations. Remember, David Coulthard started the race in third position, and at one time it looked as though he could be heading for victory. Unfortunately, he picked up that penalty for speeding in the pit lane, and after having gone past Johnny Herbert, he had to come in to make a pit stop, and that dropped him back down into third place behind John Alesi. But at the end, he was the first to congratulate Johnny for his win. The heart rate back down to around 70 or 80 beats per minute now. Welcome back to Formula One Grand Prix, and we're going to take a little look behind the scenes, literally this time, with a look at the Grand Prix paddock and how it's all put together at the start of the weekend. The Grand Prix paddocks vary as we go around the world. This one at Manicourt, one of the biggest. And we speak to Claudio Berro, the logistics manager of Ferrari, about how they put it all together. He says in logistical terms, the work starts 4 days before the weekend. The trucks arrive on the scene 2 days before the Friday. To assemble all the gear, the awnings, that takes a lot of time. Then we have a real, like, choreography. It's almost a ballet of workers to be able to get it all together. In the Ferrari camp, we have 2 motorhomes, 3 workshop trucks, and an assistance van. In total, there are about 12 people touring the European Grand Prix circuit.
Quindi in totale abbiamo 12 persone che conducono questi mezzi per tutta Europa.
Probably the most remarkable paddock in Formula One and the most difficult in many ways is the one at Monaco. Right in the centre of town and very restricted for space. There's no room for error in the way that the paddock is organised. It's all carefully planned before the buses move into place. The girls from Renault getting right into the job as well.
Chaque écurie a des filles aussi. Généralement, on est là.
Well, each team has its hostesses. Generally, we help the guys, and then we're helping with serving food and drinks during practice and the race. Most other hostesses arrive once everything is assembled. They come in by plane, pampered, perfumed, fresh as roses. For us, it's not quite like that. This is Luigi Montanini of Benetton saying every square centimetre or millimetre is counted. Once we map out the space, the mounting of the gear only takes about 4 hours. Well, I'm off to the kitchen now because I'm also the chef for the Benetton team. So this is Formula One City, running at full pace as support to the real work that's going on at the circuit. With space so limited at Monaco, there is one place to expand, that's to the water, where they're allowed to tie up their boats. And this is René Isoard of the Automotive Club of Monaco saying, well, as well as the motorhomes along the port, the teams are able to rent boats or bring their own boats. It's quite exceptional and something that creates the charm of Monaco. Of course, here we don't have garages big enough for the teams, which means that some of the material is in the pits and some along the quay, along the port. They have to put up awnings along the port, which is one of the peculiarities of Monaco.
Qui est le long de la piste, et d'avoir le garage par lui-même où il travaille sur le quai Antoine Ier, qui est le long du port. Et donc là, ils doivent déployer les tentes autour des camions pour pouvoir travailler. C'est une des particularités du Grand Prix de Monaco, et malheureusement, on ne peut pas faire grand-chose là-dessus.
Another thing in Monaco is that the pits are so small. We need to have special technical structures. For Ferrari, the pits are specially organised, not only for our image, but for a better working environment, more clean and fitting to the image of Formula One.
Di zona di lavoro all'altezza della situazione per quanto riguarda l'immagine.
All part of the behind-the-scenes action of the Grand Prix racing scene. It's not all just about getting the cars on the track. There's a lot of support business going on as well. The Total Fuel Company is the latest petrol company to come into the Formula One scene, along with Peugeot engines and the Jordan team. We spoke to Jordan's team manager, John Walton, about the introduction of Total to the team this year.
The fuel for us is supplied by Total, who's a new company in Formula One. At the moment, they seem to be up at the top with the likes of Elf and everybody else. And for the short period of time, I think they've done a fantastic job for us.
Well, Total, of course, have previous experience in motorsport, particularly in rally raids, supporting the Citroën ZXs in things like the Paris-Dakar event. and that association has lasted for several years now. But Formula One is a completely different business. Very strict rules and regulations, as we saw at the beginning of the year. Well, the regulations are very strict in Formula One today. The fuel is based on Euro Super 95, the commercial petrol. That being said, there is a certain tolerance for demonstrating our technology. The petrol is quite complicated, and we're always looking to reach the maximum limits within the regulations. That means perhaps a few % difference, which can mean the difference between winning and losing a race.
Finalement faire gagner la voiture quand on voit les écarts qu'il y a dans cette compétition.
The company sends a team of 4 to each Grand Prix, including a specialised engineer. His job not only to survey the fuel, but also the lubricants and brake fluid supplied to Jordan by his refinery. Here the regulations play a big role in daily life.
Our role is to develop specific products to be used in the cars.
We develop 3 sorts of products: the petrol, the oil, and the fluids to be used, for example, in the gearbox. Our role is to ensure that everything gets here okay.
Donc notre rôle ici sur les Grands Prix, c'est déjà s'assurer que les produits sont bien arrivés. Donc ça, nous faisons ça le mercredi.
It arrives on the Wednesday or the Thursday. We verify the products upon their arrival and follow their evolution right throughout the weekend. During use in the cars, we take samples before and after use, during practice and the race.
Et nous devons nous assurer que le produit est bien conforme aux réglementations, même après son utilisation.
And we can check that the products are performing to the sort of specification that we require. Well, just as in other forms of motorsport, everybody keeps a close eye on what the opposition are doing in producing the fuels. We spoke to John Walton again.
There's always the possibility of that. There's a lot of clever people in Formula One, and they, wander around garages. You don't always know who they are, so you always have to be on the lookout. And like I said, the security of it is very, very important.
Well, on top of the refueling, the racing fuel itself is a vital factor at this level of competition. A technical and commercial exercise, and everything must be thought through to get the best results. But certainly good results for Jordan.
We put a lot of effort into making sure that when the fuel arrives at the circuit, it's all sealed. Our people look after it, check it, make sure it hasn't been tampered with and everything else. One of the other big aspects of it is, like, to save things being polluted and that. After the race meetings are over, all the fuel that doesn't get used and the oil that comes out of the cars and everything else is put back into containers, resealed and taken away, goes back to the refinery. So for us, the whole thing is just, fantastic job being done by Toto.
So Total involved in Formula One this year. They've already had a 2nd and 3rd in Montreal. Now they're looking to climb the top step of the podium soon with Jordan and Peugeot. This weekend then, the German Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher leading the World Championship and performing in front of his home crowd. Let's take a look back at some of the recent years at Hockenheim, starting off with 1991 and a classic battle between Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna. Prost in the Ferrari, being forced to brake a little too late into the chicane. Well, in fact, up front, it was Williams who went on to take a superb 1-2 finish. Mansell ahead of Patrese and Jean Alesi. Mansell on the podium with Ayrton Senna and a delighted Michael Schumacher, 3rd at his first ever home Grand Prix. 1993, and Williams dominating once again, but it was Damon Hill who led the most part of the race, only to pick a puncture at the closing stages. So it was his teammate Alain Prost, even with the stop-and-go penalty, who came through to take the win. Michael Schumacher finished in 2nd position, and Mark Blundell took a superb 3rd place. And so on to last year, and the dramas at the start, which would take out almost half the field. A shunt at the back, and then one at the front as well, with Mika Häkkinen charging across in front of everybody into the first corner, and as a result he would pick up a ban from the next race in Hungary. And then remember this fuel stop from Jos Verstappen, how could we forget it? The Benetton bursting into flames. Thankfully nobody badly hurt in this incident, but still a salutary lesson to everybody. And of course, it started off those talks of whether Benetton were playing it fair on the refuelling equipment. Up front, the battle was going on between Gerhard Berger and Michael Schumacher, and the fans were lapping it up. But Michael Schumacher's engine blew, denying him the chance of a home win. And Gerhard Berger came through to take the first win for Ferrari in nearly 4 years. So Gerhard Berger, the winner, with a great day for Ligier as well. Olivier Panis finished in second place and Eric Bernard in third. The track itself, well, it's a combination of long straights, chicanes and the stadium section in front of the huge crowd. And we'll finish off the programme today with a quick look back at Silverstone once again. Well, of course, the war of words in the press developed into slightly more than that on the track in the race itself, when Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher clashed coming into the complex. Schumacher since then has claimed that it's difficult to get on with Damon because he's moody, and Damon on the other hand has said, why don't we put this all behind us, and has offered to share the ride round in the parade car at Hockenheim this weekend. But it's not all bad news in Formula One. And after the race at Silverstone, it was party time. The annual Jordan Bash was the opportunity for some of the drivers to get involved in a bit of music making. Damon Hill taking Johnny Herbert up onto the stage, and Eddie Jordan out from behind his drum kit for a while, introducing the stars. See if you can spot the stars on the stage at Silverstone, and watch out for Pink Floyd drummer Nick Mason on the drums. And somewhere up there at some point you'll see motorcycle 500cc world champion Kevin Schwantz. So that was the musical celebration from Silverstone. This weekend it's Hockenheim. I hope you can join me, Ben Edwards, and John Watson for live coverage on Eurosport of the German Grand Prix.